specialist Dr. Jackson Crawford. I teach at the University of Colorado Boulder, previously at UC Berkeley and UCLA. The Old Norse language has a variety of words that mean a god, and this variety is conditioned not so much by different shades of meaning in these words as it is by the demands of the poetic language. Old Norse uses an alliterating style of poetry, and so alternative words for many different things are used in order to fit the alliteration. So, for instance, if you have a poetic line that needs to alliterate on G, you have options of words for God that start with G. If you have a line that needs to alliterate on R, you have options of words for God that start with R. So let's look at what some of those are and the origins of some of them. The basic general word for God in Old Norse is God, also spelled Gud. There seems to be no particular distinction between these two different spellings in the pagan period, but after Scandinavia is converted to Christianity, the spelling with U becomes the standard spelling for the Christian God. This word probably comes from a Proto-Indo-European root that means to pour, and so ultimately the word for God in the Germanic languages such as Norse and English, you can see this is cognate with the English word God, is the thing poured out to, right? Like libations offerings are poured to. There is also the common word regin, which you often see in the possessive or genitive plural ragna, meaning of the gods. Regin means the gods, but etymologically, the rulers, the ones that are in control, which of course makes good sense. You also see this with various expansions, right, such as gin, regin, mighty gods. There are also hopt and bond, which both mean something like bindings. There is, of course, the famous pair of Aesir and Vanir, the main families of gods. Aesir including, for instance, Odin and Thor, and Vanir including, for instance, Njordr and his children Freyr and Freya. Most of the time when these words are used in poetry, it is because they alliterate with other words in the line, which can even mean that a particular god is called both, depending on what needs to be alliterated with. So, for example, in Thrimskvida and the Poetic Edda, stanza 15, we see Þó hvað það heimdallr hvítastar osa vissi hann vel fram sem Vanir aðrir. So, then Heimdallr said, he was the whitest, probably meaning handsomest, of the Aesir. He knew well forward, he could see the future like other Vanir. The word Aesir, well, it's not actually alliterating with anything. Hvítastar is, but then Vanir is being used in the fourth line because it alliterates with Vissi in the third line. So is he Aesir? Is he Vanir? Is the distinction actually meaningful? I have another video about that I'll link in a card in the top right. The singular of Aesir, if you want to refer to one god from this group, is Os. The singular of Vanir is Vanr. Another word that can be used for any god is Tyr. That, of course, is also the name of the one-handed god, but it can be used of any god to just mean God. This word is cognate with the Greek name Zeus, as well as the U in Latin Jupiter, and Dios in Sanskrit, Dios Pitar. The plural of this, which is actually more common than the singular in the meaning of just a general god, is Tivar, and you also see extensions like you do with Regin, so you see Val Tivar, slaughter gods, Sig Tivar, victory gods, etc. The purpose, again, as I pointed out, of these is to have different variations of words for gods that you can use depending on what you need to alliterate with. So, for instance, I'll give you a few examples of stanzas that show the use based on alliteration. From Håkonarmál 10, Håkonni hava með hermikin heim bond of Bodit. So the gods, in this case Bond, because we're alliterating with Bodit, have invited Håkon home with a great army. Or in Völuspá 23, 25, and a couple other stanzas, we have a series of different words for gods. Þó gengu regin ol og rokstóla, gin heilo gold og það gatusk. So then all the gods went onto their judgment stools, the very powerful gods, and they discussed that. And we see different words for gods depending on what we're alliterating with. We see regin, gold, and of course gin heilo. So the Language is rich in poetic synonyms, not just for God, but for many other words, as I've discussed in my video about kinnings and poetry, which I'll link in the end screen. I hope this has been somewhat interesting and informative for you. And from beautiful Wyoming, I'm wishing you all the best.